about the last time, you didn't get that job you were perfectly qualified for? Or the last time your social media feed made you so viscerally angry, you actually felt your heart rate spike?
Right. Or the last time you watched this really nuanced, brilliant piece of art just completely fail while, I don't know, something entirely formulaic shattered box office records.
Exactly. And what did you do? You probably blamed the algorithm.
Because it's the easiest target in the room. I mean, it's the invisible hand that's currently on the steering wheel of the culture, so we point at it.
We all do. But what if the algorithm is entirely innocent? What if the code is doing exactly what we asked it to do and we just, can't stomach the reflection?
Innocent is a strong word.
Well, we're doing a massive deep dive into our sources today to figure that out. We've got sociological theories on legibility. We have Facebook's leaked engineering weights, machine learning audits from MIT, and the actual structural realities of 2026 search engine optimization.
It's a huge stack of data.
It is. And the mission today is to build a case that we didn't actually surrender our decision-making to algorithms at all. We just gave them our excuses. And we called that objectivity. We built this alibi machine.
Okay, I have to stop you right at the jump.
Go ahead.
That is a massive and frankly unearned conceptual leap. You're assigning malicious intent to a spreadsheet, essentially.
Am I?
Yeah, I mean, an algorithm is just math. It's a calculator processing data faster and more efficiently than a human brain ever could. A machine learning model evaluating, say, 1 million rows of data isn't looking for an alibi.
Right.
It's optimizing for the target it's given. It doesn't have an agenda.
See, I'm not assigning intent to the math. I agree it's math. I'm assigning function to the institutions wielding it. And to understand that function, you have to look at the blueprint of how these systems are designed.
Okay.
The core problem isn't the calculator itself. It's that the blueprint requires something called legibility.
Meaning what, exactly? Like that things need to be readable?
That things need to be measurable, standardized, and entirely flat. Institutions fundamentally hate chaos. A state government, a massive corporation, a central bank, they cannot govern what they cannot understand.
You need data to make decisions.
Right, so they seek to make messy, organic, human realities readable. We're looking at the work of the author James C. Scott here, which is heavily analyzed in our sources from Ribbon Farm and Ideolia. High modernist institutions operate on this exact formula of failure through legibility.
I need a tangible example.
Yeah.
What does a failure of legibility actually look like?
Okay, think about a centuries-old old-growth forest. To a botanist or, an indigenous population, it's a perfectly balanced, deeply complex ecosystem.
It works.
Right. But to a state tax assessor or a lumber institution, that complexity is useless. It looks like Shannon White noise.
Wait, Shannon White noise, like the information theory concept.
Yeah.
Like static on a TV screen.
Yeah. Just like that. When you tune an old TV between stations, the static is actually dense with data, but there's no discernible pattern to it. It's pure chaos to the human eye.
Right.
So to an institution, an organic forest is static. They can't measure the yield of a tangled web of underbrush and scattered irregular tree species. So what do?
They cut it down.
They clear-cut the entire ecosystem, and they plant rows of identical, fast-growing pine trees. It's an agricultural grid. They destroy the ecosystem to create a legible, harvestable timber factory.
Because you can't optimize an ecosystem.
No.
You can only optimize a measurable output, and if the output is timber yield, the grid works perfectly.
It works on paper, yeah, until the ecosystem collapses because you removed all the natural safeguards against disease. Which brings us to a foundational rule for this entire investigation.
Okay, lay it on me.
In 1975, an economist named Charles Goodhart formulated what we now call Goodhart's law. It states, and this is vital, when a measure becomes a target, it ceases to be a good measure.
Oh, I've seen this play out in corporate environments constantly.
Yeah.
The moment management decides to tie like end-of-year bonuses to a specific key performance indicator, that metric becomes entirely useless for actually measuring the health of the business.
Because everyone just games the metric.
Exactly.
The moment you place pressure on a statistical regularity for control purposes, it just collapses. The classic, almost farcical example of this comes from the Soviet Union.
Okay, the Soviet Union.
Yeah. The central planners in Moscow needed to measure the productivity of a state-run nail factory.
Sure.
So first, they measured the factory's output by the pure quantity of nails produced. If you make more nails, you get a higher rating.
Okay, so the factory manager looks at the target, looks at his resources, and meets the target by manufacturing millions upon millions of microscopic, entirely useless nails.
Exactly. Because producing a tiny nail takes a fraction of the metal and a fraction of the time, but it still counts as one nail on the ledger.
The quota is crushed.
Wow.
The factory is celebrated.
But you can't build a house with a microscopic nail. So, the central planners realize their mistake. They adjust the metric. They declare that the factory will now be measured by the physical weight of its output. Tons of nails produced.
Let me guess. The factory manager pivots and produces a very small number of massive, incredibly heavy, oversized chunks of iron.
Unusable, heavy iron spikes.
Wow.
The metric was achieved, the utility was completely destroyed. And this isn't just a failure of a centrally planned economy from 50 years ago. This pathology of legibility is everywhere right now. Look at modern academic publishing.
The whole publish or perish dynamic.
Exactly. Universities and grant boards need a legible metric for academic merit. They cannot read every single paper deeply to assess its philosophical contribution to human knowledge. That's white noise to them.
So they target publication volume.
Volume and journal impact factors. How many papers did you publish in highly cited journals?
And the result is the salami slicing of research. You take one solid, comprehensive study, and instead of publishing it as a single definitive paper, you slice it into 4 minor, incremental papers just to boost your publication count.
Salami slicing, the proliferation of low-quality papers, and the systemic erosion of scientific replication. Researchers won't spend time verifying someone else's work because replication studies don't get published in high-impact journals.
Right, so the target is met, the publication numbers go up, but the underlying science suffers.
Deeply. Or look at the sources we have on clinical healthcare. Hospital administrators target length of stay metrics. They want a legible number showing how efficiently beds are being turned over.
So doctors are actively pressured to discharge patients faster.
And what happens? Premature discharges lead to a massive, immediate spike in emergency room readmissions. The patient gets sicker. The system costs more.
But that specific length of stay column on the spreadsheet looked fantastic for that particular quarter.
It looked brilliant.
Look, I hear the structural critique, I really do. But you're cherry-picking systems with exceptionally poorly designed incentives.
Am I?
Yes. What about fields where the drive for legibility actually works? Where metrics uncover hidden truths that human bias completely obscures? I'm thinking of sports analytics.
Make the case.
For a century, baseball and basketball were run by scouts who evaluated players based on gut instinct, the eye test.
Right.
They drafted guys because they had a good jawline or because they looked confident walking into the batter's box. It was romanticized human judgment, and it was deeply mathematically flawed.
So what changed?
The spreadsheets arrived. Analysts brought in adjusted plus-minus models, win shares, player efficiency ratings. The math found immense value that human eyes completely missed. It stripped away the bias, and it optimized the game.
The spreadsheets absolutely found inefficiencies. I'm not denying that. But look at what happens when the metric becomes the entire reality. Our sources pull from the recent Jaylen Brown trade and his massive contract negotiations.
Okay.
For context, he was eligible for a 2-year, $142 million extension.
Right. And the front office has to make a cold financial decision on whether a human being is worth $140 million.
So they look at the legible metrics. The spreadsheets measure his turnovers, they measure his true shooting percentage, they measure his usage rate.
Which is an objective mathematical baseline of his on-court production. It removes the emotion.
It removes the emotion, yes. But it also removes everything that actually wins a championship that cannot be counted. The spreadsheets completely fail to measure a player's elimination game elevation.
You mean stepping up in the playoffs?
That sheer force of will when a season is on the line. They fail to quantify the physical and psychological toll of a player willingly absorbing the opponent's best defensive pressure just to get a star teammate an easier shot.
You're talking about intangibles.
I'm talking about reality. But the spreadsheet prices those human elements at 0. Because there is no column for that.
No column for the sheer force of will.
None.
But a front office can't justify a 9-figure contract to their ownership group based on the vibe of a player's defensive pressure. They need a number.
That's the exact trap of the alibi machine. The drive for legibility forces the institution to ignore the unquantifiable. And here is where it gets dangerous.
Why?
Because we aren't just dealing with spreadsheets anymore. We have outsourced this entire drive for legibility to automated recommendation engines and artificial intelligence. We are delegating our decisions to impenetrable black boxes.
Okay, I'm going to push back aggressively on this because this is where the romanticization of human judgment really falls apart. Let's look at the ETH Zurich and MIT open access sources on artificial intelligence and decision-making.
Okay, let's look at them.
You're talking about the danger of delegating to a black box. But human decision-making is deeply structurally provably flawed.
It's constrained by biology, sure.
It's worse than constrained. We suffer from choice overload. If I hand a human HR manager a stack of 1,000 resumes for one open position, they don't give every candidate a fair, holistic evaluation.
No, they don't.
They experience severe cognitive fatigue. They get hungry before lunch and start rejecting qualified people. They fall back on extreme unconscious biases based on names, addresses, or where someone went to school.
I don't disagree with the flaws of human cognition. I really don't.
An AI algorithm uses automated computational optimization. It can evaluate 10 million alternatives uniformly. It requires a strictly defined decision search space and an objective function.
Right.
If you give it 10 million resumes, it evaluates candidate number 10 million with the exact same rigor, the exact same mathematical precision as candidate number 1. That is objectively fairer than a tired, hungry, biased human being.
I will absolutely concede the point on cognitive capacity. A human being obviously cannot uniformly process a million alternatives, and human bias is a heavily documented, grim reality. My argument isn't that a computer's processing power is inherently worse than a human's.
Then what is the argument?
The danger of the algorithm is that it lacks interpretability.
What do you mean by interpretability? If it's fair, why does it matter if we can interpret it?
Because if we can't interpret it, we can't course correct when it inevitably internalizes our own hidden biases.
Okay.
In the ETH Zurich source, they detail exactly how these machine learning models operate. Let's stick with your HR example. An institution wants to hire the best possible candidate.
Right.
They feed historical data into a deep learning neural network. The AI isn't just looking at a flat spreadsheet. It's looking at billions of potential connections across hidden layers of data.
It's finding latent patterns that human analysts wouldn't even think to look for.
Exactly. So it might determine that the ultimate predictor of a candidate's sociability and teamwork is discovered by taking the variable of their education, raising it to the power of 5, and interacting it with their age raised to the power of 9.
Education to the 5th power, interacting with age to the 9th power. That's just the mathematical weight the neural network assigned to minimize the error rate in the historical data.
Yes, but it operates as a total black box. The algorithm cannot explain why education to the power of 5 interacted with age to the power of 9 equals a good teammate.
It just knows the math correlates with past successful hires.
But the deeply human, nuanced concept of tacit culture, fit the actual ability to read a room, to de-escalate conflict, to collaborate, is entirely erased from the evaluation process.
No column for that.
None. The algorithm creates a proxy for sociability that is mathematically absolute but conceptually meaningless to a human being. And because it's a black box, because no one can explain the math, it becomes the ultimate alibi machine for the institution.
I see.
If the algorithm rejects a highly qualified candidate, the HR manager just shrugs and says, well, the computer said no. There's no accountability.
But if the overall accuracy rate of the hiring pool goes up, isn't that a net positive?
Not if the math is quietly laundering historical prejudice. Look at the ProPublica audit of the Compass algorithm.
Right, this is the recidivism algorithm, the tool used by judges across the country to inform criminal sentencing decisions and bail amounts.
Yes. The system is designed to predict the likelihood of a defendant committing a future crime if they are released. And on the surface, it looks objective. ProPublica audited the results and found that the algorithm had roughly the same overall prediction accuracy for both black defendants and white defendants.
Okay, so it sounds like it's achieving statistical parity.
It's achieving an illusion of parity. When you dig into the errors when the algorithm was wrong, a massive, devastating disparity appeared.
What kind of disparity?
ProPublica found that the algorithm falsely labeled black defendants as high risk for future crime at nearly twice the rate it falsely labeled white defendants.
Twice the rate.
Yes. Conversely, white defendants who actually went on to commit future crimes were frequently assigned lower risk scores.
Wait. If the overall accuracy was the same, how could the false positive rate be that skewed?
In machine learning, it's a failure of what's called balance for the positive class. Think of it like a medical test. If a test is 90% accurate for both men and women overall, you think it's fair. But what if the 10% of the time it's wrong? It's telling healthy women they have cancer, but telling sick men they are perfectly healthy. The overall accuracy hides the asymmetric damage.
But the developers of Compass didn't explicitly program race as a variable into the algorithm, right? It's usually legally prohibited to use race as an input in these systems.
They didn't have to. The algorithm looks at dozens of secondary variables: zip codes, family history of incarceration, educational background.
Oh, I see.
These variables act as proxies. They correlate so heavily with historical systemic inequalities that the algorithm just reconstructs race mathematically without ever seeing a column for it.
So the historical bias of the criminal justice system is just baked directly into the training data. The algorithm learns the bias, optimizes for it, and spits it back out as a definitive score.
And the court system, gets to wash its hands of the moral weight of the decision. A judge looks at a high-risk score on a screen, denies bail, and gets to say, the math decided. It's an objective risk assessment.
Wow.
That is the Alibi machine functioning perfectly. It's a laundering service for institutional bias. We take our ugliest histories, process them through a hidden layer of neural networks, and rebrand them as empirical truth.
But the MIT paper explicitly points out that computer scientists are actively working to fix this. Researchers are developing adversarial methods to design decision-making processes that are robust against this kind of gaming.
They are trying, yes.
They're building new mathematical constraints, things like statistical parity and relaxed forms of disparate impact. The field knows the bias exists, and they are actively trying to inject fairness back into the math.
And while the computer scientists spend the next decade trying to mathematically define fairness, the rest of society is just automating moral philosophy by popular vote.
What do you mean?
Consider the Brookings Institution source. We're moving from sentencing guidelines to autonomous vehicles. The trolley problem.
The classic ethical dilemma. A runaway trolley is heading down a track toward 5 tied-up people. You can pull a lever to divert it onto a track with only one tied-up person. Do you actively choose to kill one to save 5? Or do you do nothing and let 5 die?
Right. And for decades, that was just a thought experiment for philosophy undergrads. But now, autonomous car manufacturers have to actually program that decision into a literal machine.
Because if a self-driving car loses its brakes, does it swerve into a crowd of pedestrians to save its passengers, or does it drive into a concrete wall to save the pedestrians, killing the driver?
Exactly. The machine has to be given an objective function for who lives and who dies.
So how did they solve it?
They devised a voting-based system. Researchers created the moral machine experiment. They put these lethal scenarios online and asked 1.3 million people from around the world to vote on what the car should do.
Hold on. Let me just sit with that number for a second. 1.3 million people. They crowdsourced a lethal ethical decision.
They crowdsourced it. They aggregated the moral intuitions of the internet, summarized the overall choices, and proposed applying that statistical perspective to the algorithms driving the cars.
They turned an existential moral crisis into a Twitter poll.
They automated ethics by popular vote. And they called it objective because it was mathematically aggregated across a massive sample size. We are delegating the heaviest, most agonizing human burdens to the black box.
Right.
And we aren't doing it because the algorithm is wiser than us. We are doing it to avoid the terrifying responsibility of having to make the choice and own the choice ourselves.
I see the institutional critique here. I really do. The stakes in criminal justice and autonomous lethality are massive.
They are.
But if we pivot from public administration to the private sector, specifically social media, the dynamic shifts completely. The platforms aren't trying to solve the trolley problem. They aren't trying to determine who goes to jail. They are just trying to serve content. Let's look at the Knight Foundation essay on social media recommendation algorithms.
The underlying architecture of the modern internet. The core mechanism they detail there is called matrix factorization.
Right. And matrix factorization is, at its core, simply a mathematical way to predict engagement by finding hidden attributes across billions of highly sparse data points.
Explain how a matrix is sparse for our listeners.
Imagine a massive spreadsheet. Rows are users, columns are every single post, video, or article ever created on a platform. Billions of rows, billions of columns.
Okay.
But any single user has only ever seen a microscopic fraction of the content. So almost the entire spreadsheet is empty. It's a sparse matrix. The algorithm's job is to predict what you would click on if it filled in the blank cells.
And how does it guess?
Well, it doesn't rely on demographics. That's the big misconception.
Yeah.
It doesn't care if you're a 60-year-old man in Ohio or a teenager in Tokyo. It ignores your stated age and location.
Then what does it use?
It relies purely on behavioral signals. It finds latent patterns in what you actually do. If you watch video A and video B all the way through, and a million other who watched A and B also watched video C, the algorithm predicts you will like video C. It compresses human interests into mathematical vectors in a high-dimensional space.
It compresses a human being into a cluster of coordinates based on their clicks.
Yes. And this fundamentally proves my point about the alibi machine. The algorithm is neutral. It is a mirror. It does not possess an agenda.
You really think it's a mirror?
It does not possess common sense, and it certainly does not possess malicious intent. It looks at the behavioral signals of the users. If the internet is angry, it is because people are angry. The algorithm is just reflecting our own outrage, our own tribalism back at us. You can't blame the mirror for the reflection.
That defense relies on a fundamental misunderstanding of what optimization actually is. It assumes the algorithm simply measures what is there and passively displays it.
Which it does.
But it ignores the fact that algorithms optimize for a specific, heavily weighted target. We need to look at the 2019 and 2020 Facebook algorithm changes, which we only know about because of the Frances Haugen leaks.
The shift to the meaningful social interactions formula, MSI.
Exactly. Before MSI, recommendation algorithms were relatively simple. Facebook's older system, EdgeRank, essentially just multiplied an affinity score, how much you interact with the person, by a basic weight for the type of post.
A simple chronological and affinity-based feed?
Yeah, a video got a different weight than a photo. But the MSI formula changed the architecture of human connection. It computed a complex, weighted sum of probabilities. The formula is literally P, representing the predicted probability of the user, the item, and the interaction type.
P of user-item interaction. So before it shows me a post, it calculates the exact mathematical likelihood that I will take a specific action on that specific piece of content.
But here is the critical part. Not all interactions were valued equally. Facebook engineers manually weighted the interactions.
You mean what?
A passive like was given a very low weight, but they weighted comments overwhelmingly higher. If the algorithm predicted a post would make you leave a comment, it rocketed that post to the top of everyone's feed.
From a purely business perspective, that makes sense. A comment takes more effort. It requires the user to stop scrolling, open the keyboard, and type. It signals much deeper engagement than just double-tapping a photo.
It's true.
Deep engagement drives retention. Retention drives ad revenue.
It makes perfect sense on a spreadsheet, but think about the behavioral reality of what they built. What actually drives a human being to stop scrolling, open a keyboard, and type out a comment on a public forum?
I mean, usually it's a disagreement or a strong emotional reaction. It's outrage.
Outrage and division. Nobody leaves an impassioned multi-paragraph comment on a photo of a lukewarm bowl of oatmeal. You leave a comment when someone is wrong on the internet. In our sources, a former social media producer explicitly admitted that they intentionally posted divisive, slightly flawed, or controversial content specifically to elicit comments.
Because they knew the algorithm rewarded the friction.
The engineers at Facebook did not program the algorithm to be angry. I agree with you there. They didn't write a line of code saying promote hatred.
Right.
They programmed it to optimize for a perfectly legible metric, the comment. And the algorithm, running billions of simulations a second, realized that polarizing, tribal, divisive content was the absolute most efficient way to hit the target.
The metric became the target, and the quality of the ecosystem collapsed.
Goodhart's law at scale.
But the engineers aren't blind. These platforms employ armies of data scientists and behavioral psychologists. They must have seen the metric warping the platform in real time.
They did see it. And this is where the mirror defense completely shatters. In early 2021, Facebook actually built a machine learning model to classify posts as either good for the world or bad for the world. Yes, they trained it based on massive user surveys where people explicitly told them which posts made them feel terrible.
Okay, so they identified the toxic content, they found the posts that had the highest reach, and they analyzed them.
And they found that the posts with the highest algorithmic reach were overwhelmingly the ones users classified as bad for the world. The algorithm was systematically promoting toxicity because toxicity drove the MSI comment metric.
Wow.
So the engineers wanted to algorithmically demote the harmful content.
So they deployed the new model. They suppressed the toxic content to clean up the ecosystem.
They tried, but when they tested the strong version of the good for the world model, it decreased how often users opened the app. It hurt retention. It hurt the bottom line.
So they killed it.
The executives stepped in. They abandoned the strong version and deployed a heavily watered-down, much weaker version. Engagement optimization explicitly won out over societal health. The algorithm is not a neutral mirror. It is a funhouse mirror, aggressively and intentionally warping the image of humanity to extract the maximum amount of attention, because attention is the only legible metric that translates to revenue.
Okay, if we accept that. If the algorithm is aggressively warping the image to extract attention, then the algorithm is entirely at fault for our current state of political and social polarization.
Yeah, I think so.
It's a machine designed to brainwash us. It takes normal users and locks them into these impenetrable filter bubbles where they only see extreme, radicalizing content.
That is the most widely held belief about the modern internet. It's the plot of a dozen documentaries.
Because it makes intuitive sense. You just proved that the system prioritizes outrage to maximize comments.
It prioritizes outrage, yes, but it does not single-handedly create the echo chamber. Let's look at the Wikipedia and PMC sources on algorithmic curation, polarization, and misinformation. We have to correct the myth of the algorithmic puppet master.
Why?
The empirical data simply does not support it.
What data? How can the algorithm not be responsible for the bubbles it creates?
Because it isn't creating them out of thin air. A 2023 study out of Rutgers University closely examined Google search personalization. They wanted to see if the algorithm was hiding opposing viewpoints from users.
And did they?
They found that partisan news engagement correlates much more strongly with a user's own ideological leanings and their own click history than with algorithmic recommendations. Furthermore, a massive multi-country study in PNAS looking at Twitter found balance amplification across the political spectrum. The math showed minimal independent influence on the formation of filter bubbles.
Wait, back up. If the algorithm isn't artificially isolating us, why is the internet completely siloed into warring factions? Is that just a fancy sociological term for birds of a feather flock together, or is it something deeper?
It's deeper because it's active, not just passive. Homophily is the deeply ingrained human tendency to self-select into tribes. We don't just prefer the company of those who agree with us, we actively, aggressively seek out confirming information, and we violently reject dissonant information.
So we do it to ourselves.
The algorithm does not have to lock you in an echo chamber. You are eagerly running into the room and locking the door yourself. The real culprit isn't the code, it's our own pre-existing human preferences.
But what about the spread of misinformation? You can't just blame that on human self-selection. False news, hoaxes, conspiracy theories, they spread like wildfire on these platforms. A human being can't amplify a lie to 1 million people in an hour without a machine doing the heavy lifting.
The machine does the lifting, but humans provide the fuel. Look at the 2018 study conducted by researchers at MIT and the University of Washington. It's one of the most comprehensive studies on this topic. They analyzed Twitter data from 2009 all the way to 2016. Millions of tweets. And they found that false news spreads farther, deeper, and faster than true news in every single category of information.
Define faster.
Specifically, falsehoods reach 1,500 people 6 times faster on average than the truth.
6 times faster. Let me just repeat that. A lie reaches 1,500 people 6 times faster than a verified fact. Why? The algorithm doesn't have a truth-detecting module that tells it to prioritize lies.
Exactly. It's not because the algorithm is programmed to love lies. It's because of human novelty and emotional arousal. Think about it. Reality is often boring. It's nuanced, it's slow, and it's constrained by the laws of physics and facts.
Yeah, truth is complicated.
But fiction can be perfectly engineered in a lab to trigger human outrage, surprise, or disgust. False news is inherently more shocking and more novel than reality.
And humans are biologically hardwired to pay attention to novelty. If you see something surprising, you share it.
We share it to signal to our tribe. The algorithm doesn't know it's a lie. The algorithm simply measures the human reaction, the rapid clicks, the frantic retweets, the extended dwell time as people stare at a shocking headline.
Right.
It sees the engagement spike, and it accelerates the distribution.
So the algorithm isn't a puppet master pulling our strings. It's more like a high-speed rail network.
Built precisely on the tracks of our worst human instincts.
I have to concede this. The implication is actually worse than the puppet master theory. If the system is an alibi machine, it's because it is vastly easier for society to blame a block of code in Silicon Valley than to take a long, hard look at the ugly, tribal, emotionally reactive human behavior that is generating the data in the first place.
We're blaming the mirror because we hate the reflection.
Exactly. And because we have allowed this high-speed rail network of outrage and engagement to dominate information distribution, it hasn't just changed how we read. It has fundamentally changed how information is created in the first place.
Which brings us to the structural reality of the 2026 SEO dystopia.
Search engine optimization. The Izazani solutions source covering the evolution of Google's algorithms.
Specifically, a system called NavBoost. Because social media algorithms conditioned users to demand immediate, frictionless gratification, search engines had to evolve to keep up.
They couldn't just rank pages based on authoritative links anymore.
Right. NavBoost evolved into a hyper-responsive, real-time weighting system. It takes aggregate human click data and uses it to violently re-rank search results. It abandoned traditional, neutral algorithmic ranking in favor of what the industry calls the CTR truth, click-through rate.
Right. The Department of Justice leak analysis defined this dynamic by separating the short click from the long click.
Break that down for us.
A short click is a bounce. You search for a recipe, you click the first result, you see an 8,000-word essay about the author's grandmother, you realize the page is useless for making dinner, and you hit the back button within 3 seconds.
They've all been there.
NavBoost sees that short click, registers user frustration, and actively penalizes the site.
And the long click?
A long click means you search, you click a link, and you do not return to the search results page. You found what you needed, you are satisfied. In 2026, the long click is the absolute gold standard of SEO. It is the metric of survival.
But the landscape has changed. To achieve that long click in an era where AI overviews summarize every answer at the very top of the screen before the user even scrolls, writers are forced to adapt to a hostile environment. They must use what is called snippet-first architecture.
Meaning what in practice?
Think about the catch-22. If you write a clear, concise answer to a question, the AI scrapes your page, summarizes your hard work in a text box at the top of Google, and the user gets their answer without ever clicking your link.
Right, you get zero traffic, which means zero ad revenue. You go out of business.
So creators have to intentionally write to be cited by the AI, but simultaneously withhold enough critical information to force the human to actually click the link. It's an industry-wide practice called strategic omission.
Give me an example. How does a writer structurally manipulate an AI summary?
Let's say you write a tech blog. You can't just write a headline that says, "There are many ways to improve site speed, including caching."
Because the AI just lifts that.
Exactly. The AI summarizes that, the user reads it, and your site dies. Instead, you have to write a power hook. You write, "Our 2026 audit revealed a latency ghost that costs sites 12% in traffic, and the fix is counterintuitive."
Ah, you give the AI a highly specific, totally manufactured phrase to cite the latency ghost, but you intentionally leave a gap in the logic.
A curiosity gap. The human reader sees the AI summary, reads the term latency ghost, realizes they have absolutely no idea what that is or how to fix it, and they are psychologically forced to click your link to resolve the tension.
That's insidious.
Think about what has happened here. You are no longer writing to inform a human being. You are writing to manipulate a machine learning model into manipulating a human being into giving you a long click.
Look, I hear the cynicism in your voice, but look at the metrics the search engines are optimizing for. They are targeting ISAT, which is information satisfaction, and they are relentlessly targeting INP, interaction to next paint.
Explain INP, because it sounds like a metric for watching paint dry.
And it's the metric of friction. INP measures the exact millisecond latency of every single interaction a user has on a web page.
Okay.
If you click a drop-down menu or a Buy Now button, and the page takes 200 milliseconds to visually respond, the algorithm registers that hesitation and penalizes your site's ranking.
Right.
The search engines are forcing creators to build high-quality, perfectly frictionless, highly satisfying, lightning-fast user experiences. How is that a dystopia? As a user, I hate slow, clunky websites. Optimizing for speed and satisfaction is a massive win for the consumer.
It's a win for frictionlessness, yes, but it creates a total inescapable digital monoculture. Because every single writer on the internet is terrified of the NavBoost penalty, they all execute the exact same dual-track content strategy.
Track 1 and Track 2.
Track 1 is entirely for the skimmer. It's bolded conclusions, bulleted summary boxes, immediate gratification, zero nuance. It's designed to satisfy the short-click instinct.
And Track 2.
Track 2, buried further down the page, is for the AI researcher. It's 800 words of dense technical jargon designed purely to build entity authority for the algorithm to scrape. Every piece of writing, every recipe, every analysis on the internet is forced into this exact same structural straitjacket.
Because that is what the data says the aggregate user wants. Immediate answers backed by deep algorithmic authority.
But look at what is completely lost in that transaction. Algorithmic curation, driven by these relentless engagement and retention metrics, systematically undervalues the intuitive, holistic judgment that humans use to foster serendipity.
Serendipity doesn't scale.
The accidental discovery of novel information. The wandering, unformatted thought. The bizarre, wildly structured, deeply personal essay that takes 20 minutes to read but completely alters your worldview. NavBoost penalizes it because it doesn't have a bulleted summary at the top. There is no serendipity anymore. No column for that.
We have traded the messy, unpredictable, beautiful landscape of human knowledge for a perfectly optimized, frictionless feeding tube.
And the public is beginning to sense the dissonance. We are feeling the walls of the feeding tube closing in. This brings us to the March 2026 Pew Research Center data on how society is actually processing this reality.
Let's look at the numbers. How is the public reacting to the Alibi machine?
The statistical breakdown is incredibly stark. I want to read the exact figures from the Pew report, and I want you to let them breathe.
I'm ready.
50% of U.S. adults are now more concerned than excited about the increased use of AI in daily life. Half the country. That is up significantly from 37% just 5 years ago in 2021, and only 10% say they are more excited than concerned.
So half the country is actively, measurably anxious about the system. But the adoption rates do not reflect that fear at all.
No, they don't. The fear and the usage are completely decoupled. Adoption is massive and accelerating. 64% of teens ages 13 to 17 regularly use AI chatbots. And here is the reality of that usage. 60% of teens say students at their school use chatbots to cheat at least somewhat often.
60%. 6 out of 10 teenagers acknowledge widespread systemic cheating via AI. It isn't even a scandal anymore. It is completely normalized behavior for the next generation. They're outsourcing their cognitive development to the machine.
And among adults, it's becoming infrastructure. 31% of Americans interact with AI at least several times a day. 21% of workers actively use AI in their jobs, which is up from 16% the previous year.
So we use it constantly.
We are terrified of it, and we use it constantly. But here is the most revealing statistic in the entire report. They asked about the long-term impact of AI over the next 20 years. 56% of AI experts, the developers, the engineers, the architects, think the impact will be mostly positive.
Over half the architects believe they are building a utopia. And the public.
Just 17% of the general public believes the impact will be positive.
That is a staggering disconnect. The architects of the system are relentlessly optimistic, and the subjects of the system are deeply pessimistic. But it reveals a profound cognitive dissonance in all of us.
How so?
We are highly suspicious of the system. Almost half the public feels they have little or no control over how AI is used in their lives. But we are entirely dependent on it. We use it to write our sensitive emails, to answer our complex questions, to do our children's homework, to filter our job applicants.
And for you, listening right now, this is the exact reality you have to navigate every time you open a screen. How do you balance this? You know, intuitively, that the tools you use every single day for the sake of efficiency are simultaneously flattening the vast, unpredictable human experience into optimized, predictable metrics.
You know the feed is making you angry, but you keep scrolling.
You know the search result is manipulated, but you keep clicking.
We rely on the Alibi machine because it works. It processes the unimaginable scale of modern life. We cannot go back to a world where we read 1 million resumes by hand or evaluate every piece of information without a filter. The world is too big.
But we have to recognize the cost of the transaction. We have to see the blueprint. From the Soviet nail factory producing unusable, heavy iron spikes to meet a quota, to Facebook's meaningful social interactions formula optimizing for societal outrage, to Google's NavBoost forcing writers to construct manipulative curiosity gaps just to survive.
It's everywhere.
We have repeatedly, willingly, and eagerly surrendered our qualitative, messy human judgments to the safety of legible metrics.
Because a metric gives you an answer you can defend in a boardroom. It gives you a number. It gives you an alibi.
But if our entire information ecosystem is built on optimizing for predictable engagement, what happens to the ideas that are fundamentally uncomfortable? What happens to the concepts that are entirely original, that have no historical training data for a neural network to validate them against?
They get filtered out.
What happens to the truths that are slow to digest, that cause you to pause and reflect in silence rather than immediately click, comment, and scroll? What happens to the truths that simply cannot be quantified?
True accountability, the kind of deep moral judgment that civilization actually relies on to survive.
Yeah.
It does not have a column header.
No.
No column for that.